Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. No Taylor Rockwell today, but today's guest is Caitlin Murray. Caitlin Murray is an expert on the US women's national team. So much so, she literally wrote the book. We'll talk about that later. But we're also going to talk about SheBelieves Cup, how that went, what Jill Ellis learned, what Jill Ellis was trying to learn, how the US is looking in the run-up to the World Cup this summer. We're also going to talk about the lawsuit that was filed this morning, the gender discrimination lawsuit, and why that's attracting interest outside of the United States. And towards the end of the show, we'll also talk Olivia Moultrie, the 13-year-old professional soccer player who is training with the Portland Thorns. Caitlin got to see Olivia Moultrie in action, so we'll get her take on that. Okay, enough preamble from me. Let's get to it. So we are very lucky to have Caitlin Murray. Caitlin, welcome back to the Total Soccer Show.
Thank you for having me.
And it's been a busy day for you, right? I say we're lucky to have you because you were in high demand today. You've been very popular.
Yeah, well, the U.S. women's national team decided to go and sue U.S. Soccer for wage discrimination. And I happen to have written a book that deals a lot with those issues. It's called The National Team, The Inside Story of the Women Who Changed Soccer. It comes out on April 2nd, and it deals a lot with equal pay. And the previous wage discrimination complaint that they filed in 2016 is kind of the basis of what they filed today, where they sued U.S. Soccer. So it's been an interesting morning talking to BBC. People around the world, I think, are interested in this story.
So I'm interested to know, because obviously it's a story that we've known about for a long time, right, since 2016. Before we get into it, I'm curious, what's the BBC's angle on it? Like, what's the non-American angle or interest in the lawsuit?
Well, I think what's really interesting about what the U.S. women's national team has been doing with being so vocal about equal pay, better treatment, is that we've kind of seen this cascading effect where other women's national teams are getting into similar battles with their federations. You know, Norway recently, for the first time, their women's and men's national teams are getting the exact same pay. That's not something that happens very much. But then you have teams like Australia who have had to boycott games. Denmark boycotted and actually got sanctioned from FIFA for missing a game. So it's an issue that extends beyond the U.S. women's national team. I think they have just kind of taken on this role of being at the front of this conversation and kind of leading the way.
That makes sense. It's more like a global movement. I even saw, I didn't read too deeply, but I saw something happening with the Colombian women's national team this morning as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brazil has had some issues. And, you know, I know we're going to talk about the SheBelieves Cup. Brazil is not in good form. And I think part of it is some of the issues they've had with their federation. So this is something that is an issue that is picking up steam. I think we're seeing more women's teams being willing to stand up and kind of fight with their federations over, you know, their pay and their treatment.
So speaking of that fight, my very basic understanding of today's lawsuit is that there was no resolution to the complaint to the Equal Employment Commission, right? So is it just that the US players had just got sick of waiting and so decided to take this next step to make something happen?
Yeah, so 5 players in 2016 filed a wage discrimination complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and it's just kind of sat there. You know, I think government shutdowns probably haven't helped, right, but it's certainly not something that the EEOC has been moving very quickly on. And there is a provision that after a certain amount of time, after you filed something with the EEOC, you can file a notice that you intend to sue. And then instead of going through the EEOC to kind of arbitrate the issue, you can just sue the entity you're complaining about directly. And that's essentially what the players have chosen to do. Because the lawsuit that they filed today is really similar to what they filed in 2016.
Right.
It's just broader. All of the players are now suing instead of just 5 players, and it's broader. It's not just the equal pay issues. It's talking about things like charter flights, artificial turf. It's just the scope has expanded since then.
Did I also read that it had the possibility to include former players as well? So not just current players, but former players who may have been affected?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, Hope Solo has been continuing to kind of lead the way on this. I mean, she on her own sued U.S. Soccer, and I think because she can be kind of a lightning rod, people sort of dismiss it. But now the rest of the team has sort of followed her lead. So it's going to be interesting to see how the court interprets this and whether they agree with the players, whether they agree that past players can be part of this, whether or not it's still relevant or whether it's a moot point. So I think there are a lot of legal questions left to be answered.
And in terms of the soccer, does this help or hurt the World Cup bid? Like maybe this unites all the players and it gives them sort of a good siege mentality going into the World Cup? Or does it make things harder because they're sort of escalating the war with the Federation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I mean, it's one we can't answer until the World Cup this summer. But, you know, in 2016, they did this and then they turned around and had a pretty bad Olympics. They got knocked out in the quarterfinal. That was their worst finish in a major tournament ever. So you could say it's coincidence. I mean, there are a lot of soccer things that I would point to as being the reason they got knocked out. But there is this looming idea. Was it a distraction that they were fighting this equal pay fight with their federation at that time? I think the players are going to be pretty singularly focused and let their lawyers deal with this issue. But now it's going to be something that they're going to constantly be asked about. So from that standpoint, they're not going to be able to avoid it now that they've done this.
So let's talk about the soccer. SheBelieves Cup is the original reason we wanted to invite you onto the show. It's kind of genuinely coincidence that this lawsuit broke this morning, right?
Yeah.
So SheBelieves Cup, I'm going to say didn't go well, right? Because we did not win SheBelieves Cup, and it's kind of what we always expect to do on home soil. But at the same time, unbeaten, right? 2 draws and then the win over Brazil. So how do you look at these 3 games? Do you look at it as a success or a failure?
Well, it has to be a failure. I mean, the U.S. is supposed to win games in the U.S. The U.S. is the number 1 ranked team in the world. They are supposed to win tournaments like this. They are supposed to be the better team. I think that it is a failure in that sense, but from Jill Ellis's standpoint, I'm not going to sit here and say that she wasn't trying to win the SheBelieves Cup, because I think she was. But I think she prioritized testing some different things, trying some things that we probably won't see in the World Cup. And from that standpoint, I think she probably sees it as a success that she has gained some valuable information about where the team is at, where specific players are at, and some of the tactical things she can do. So I think it's a mixed bag. I don't know how much results matter right now, but for the players, they wanted to win this thing, and they're really disappointed about it.
So I'm really interested in the Jill Ellis sort of experimenting and finding things out. What do you think what was she testing for in the SheBelieves Cup? Maybe if we can just get into a couple of examples. And did she find anything that you think might actually be useful in the World Cup when we get there?
Yeah. Well, we'll see how useful some of these experiments have been. But I think what she was trying to do is, I think she wanted to see what different players would give her in moments where she needs to change something in a game. One of the things that we saw was Mallory Pugh was starting in the central midfield.
Yeah.
Lindsey Horan was injured. She had a quad injury, so she wasn't in this tournament. She would have been starting with Julie Ertz as sort of the number 6, and then Rose Lavelle as the number 10. Lindsey Horan is a box-to-box midfielder, and she's really, really good. So with her out, Jill Ellis asked Mallory Pugh to play in her position. Mallory Pugh is a winger for the national team. She's not a central midfielder and not a number 8. So it was interesting to see her do that. Jill Ellis talked about wanting to see if Mallory Pugh could kind of add more to the attack. She specifically mentioned Mallory Pugh being able to get some separation, get behind back lines, and be another attacking component in the midfield. But I think what we ended up seeing is that, yeah, she can do that, but she didn't have the same physicality and the ability to win the ball and break up play that Lindsey Horan does. So that kind of left the central midfield looking pretty soft. And I think other teams were just kind of able to play through them. And that's why the U.S. didn't win games that, frankly, they very well could have, and they were, competitive in. So I don't expect that Mallory Pugh is going to be playing in the central midfield in France, but I'm guessing that Jill Ellis probably is thinking, if there is a game where, I don't know, there's red cards or injuries or, a lack of substitutions, who can I move to kind of change the look of this team, change the dynamic of this team? Because in addition to Mallory Pugh playing in the central midfield, we also saw Tobin Heath was slotting in the central midfield kind of late in games. And that's kind of weird. Tobin Heath is maybe one of the best wingers in the world. Why would you take her away from the position where she's so good? And I think it probably is, if the U.S. has their backs against the wall, what can Jill Ellis do? What sort of different things can she pull out of her hat? So I don't know if we're going to see any of these things in the World Cup, but I think Jill Ellis wants to be prepared for the possibility.
Do you think there's a chance that media and fans are maybe confused by what Jill Ellis is doing because she's not doing what we expect her to be doing? Because I looked at these 3 games and I believe Mallory Pugh started in central midfield every single game, right? Which I took as a message that Jill Ellis was just determined that this was going to work somehow. But if it's something she's not even planning on doing unless it's some emergency last 10 minutes type situation, maybe I'm reading it wrong by thinking that Jill Ellis is trying too hard to make it work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing because Jill Ellis is only going to say so much. She did allude before the SheBelieves Cup started in her opening press conference. She sort of hinted that coaches are probably not going to want to lay all their cards out. They're going to want to keep them close to the vest. And I think that's probably a little bit what Jill Ellis is doing, because what I would say to fans who are very confused and very concerned about how the team has looked, I would go back and look, what did Jill Ellis do in CONCACAF qualifying in October? She didn't do any of this stuff. She took the best 11 players, put them in their best positions, and had a very straightforward game plan that worked really well. Granted, the competition in CONCACAF is not very good, but when the stakes were high, when the games actually mattered, when a berth to the World Cup was on the line, Jill Ellis simplified everything and did all the things that we expect. So I have to believe that right now it's really just about kind of tinkering, maybe throwing people off as they're scouting the U.S., and just kind of testing out some different things that if the U.S. gets in trouble, now Jill Ellis knows kind of what her options are.
So is it fair to say that maybe she really does probably just know her strong 11 and what she would like it to be? And like, for example, it would be Ertz, Lavelle and Horan. And so it almost doesn't matter to try something weird like Mallory Pugh in central midfield because she can revert to what she knows works when things get serious.
Yeah, I mean, Jill Ellis has, of course, been asked and has said that, every player has an opportunity to make a case for themselves. And I think she has to say that, if players know that the roster is kind of locked into place and there's nothing they can do about it, are you really going to get the best out of them? So she has said that. And, she's pointed out that it was around this time in 2015 that Julie Ertz really asserted herself as a starting center back. She was pretty late to the core squad for the Americans back then, and then she went on to play every minute of the World Cup. So I do think Jill Ellis probably is trying to assess who should be starting at the World Cup. But I think at the end of the day, she probably has a pretty good idea of what she has and what she wants to do.
Where do you think that leaves Sam Mewis? Because it seemed to me that Haran's absence was important because, as you said, she's really the only number 8, right? The player who can attack and defend and be everywhere. And hit some of those through balls for Morgan to be on the end of. And it seemed to me that against Brazil, getting Mewis back into central midfield, so almost to like maybe replicate Haran's role a little bit, seemed to absolutely work. So do you think it means that when push comes to shove, if Haran is, say, injured for the first game, we'll just see Julia, Sam Mewis and Rose Lavelle? Or does the fact that Mewis wasn't used as much suggest that Jill Ellis isn't that confident in her?
Yeah, I think that's sort of an open question because Samantha Mewis hasn't gotten a ton of minutes anyway. The last time she started for the U.S. was during CONCACAF qualifying when Jill Ellis rotated the entire lineup out. She had her set starting 11, and then Samantha Mewis was in that second 11 that she rotated to. Before that, the last time Sam Mewis started a game was in June. So I don't know how highly Jill Ellis does rate Samantha Mewis, but if, Lindsey Horan is out, Samantha Mewis is the next best option in terms of the attributes that she gives you, in terms of the way that she plays. She's pretty similar to Lindsey Horan. And I think she did prove something against Brazil. The caveat is that Brazil is not in good form. They've lost their last 7 games. So it was a little bit of a weaker opponent.
Yeah.
But I think if Jill Ellis is forced into the decision, I would imagine it will be at least someone who's a central midfielder and not a winger like Mallory Pugh. And I certainly don't think Samantha Mewis hurt her chances, but it will be interesting to see in these last 5 games before the World Cup, the last 5 friendlies that the U.S. has, whether we see a little bit more of Samantha Mewis.
Do you expect in those last 5 friendlies we'll see more, for want of a better word, weird experiments like Mallory Pugh in central midfield? Or do you think we'll see, here's my 11, here's what we're going to do, let's get some reps?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I don't know. I think at some point Jill Ellis does have to do that. But thinking back to 2015, I don't think the team was actually even playing that well going into the World Cup then. And, then they won it. I think at some point she is going to want to get the starting 11 time together to kind of build that chemistry. It's hard to do that when you are having these experiments. I mean, the back line didn't look very good in the SheBelieves Cup. And then I think back to, they opened this year against France, starting Emily Fox on the back line, who I don't even think is going to make the World Cup team. So you want to see some consistency. That's a wasted opportunity to get the back line time together. So I would think that Jill Ellis at some point is going to start the same starting 11, but, who knows? She likes to keep us guessing.
I guess we can't argue with her because she's got that World Cup, right?
Yeah, the World Cup has certainly bought her some benefit of the doubt in terms of some of the stuff she's been doing.
One thing that does look pretty set, at least as I understand it, is the front 3. Rapinoe on the left, Morgan in the middle, Tobin Heath on the right, and then Christen Press. I feel like she just can't play well enough to break into that front 3. Do you think that's a fair assessment of how the forwards stand? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, if there's one area of the field that there is no doubt about what they can do, whether they'll be ready for the World Cup, it's that front 3. I mean, they were the 3 best players that the U.S. had at the SheBelieves Cup, Rapinoe, Morgan, and Heath, and they've all just been in really great form. They play off each other really well. Morgan especially She hasn't scored that much lately, but she's been really good with her off the ball movement, checking back, hold up play, getting the ball to the wingers. So the chemistry between those three is really good. Kristen Press has been very good off the bench as well. And Jill Ellis said, Kristen is kind of forcing some conversations about the starting lineup. And I think that's good. I think it's really difficult to displace a player like Tobin Heath or Megan Rapinoe. I think Kristen Press has been playing so well off the bench. It's like, should you mess with a good thing that's working? Because she really has been able to impact games so well that maybe you just want that in your back pocket to know you can bring her on and really, punish some defenses that are a little bit tired.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was weirdly extra impressed by Tobin Heath from what I saw in this tournament. And I wonder, this might be weird to say because she's been obviously so famous for so long, but has Tobin Heath got better in the last couple of years? Like, she looks maybe a little faster to me or a little stronger. I'm thinking specifically of the goal against Brazil. When she started dribbling, but then she sort of cut across the front of the defender to like shield it, and just had like an extra bit of pace to get away from people that I've never really associated with her. So is that just because obviously I don't watch the US Women's National Team as much as you do? Is that my sort of inexperienced eyes just catching something for the first time, or is that something that's changed over the last couple of years?
No, I absolutely think that she has gotten better in the last few years. I'm here in Portland, Oregon, and she plays for the Portland Thorns. And one of the things that I've seen from her is, she's always been this flair player, this creative player who can, do these tricks and these moves that not a lot of other players on the U.S. Women's National Team can do. The U.S. has always been kind of very athletic, and she kind of offers a more creative style. Yeah. But the knock on her was always that she didn't know how to use her skills in the right way, and she took too many risks. And I think what we've seen is a more mature player who is making better decisions and is more decisive in her decisions. And I think we saw that on display in the SheBelieves Cup. She knows when to take players on, when to lay off the ball, and she's able to execute. Now it's not just trying things and, sometimes it comes off and that's great, and sometimes she loses the ball. Now I think she knows how to pick and choose those moments, and that has made her incredibly dynamic and unpredictable and just difficult to beat. She single-handedly can open so much space for the team, and I think it's because of how she has improved in her decision-making.
Hey, everybody. This is Taylor jumping in. Daryl is not here. I'm just going to give you my own thoughts on what's been happening.
How'd you get in here?
I just appeared out of nowhere.
You sure did.
Mid-interview.
Good trick.
As I want to do. I'm actually Spider-Man. I swing into the window. That's how I roll.
So actually,
the 12 tall buildings we have in Richmond, it's a very limited area that I can police the crime on.
It's a long way between buildings.
Yes, it is.
You got to really trust the webbing.
I'm long-range Spider-Man. That's how it works.
Taylor is here to help me with an ad read.
Yes. I would prefer that you call me long-range Spider-Man, but that's fine. Whatever.
Long-range Spider-Man.
Thank you.
Taylor Rockwell. Spider-Man wouldn't reveal his identity, for one thing.
That's
He'd
true.
keep his mask on.
That's true.
Is here to help me with today's ad reads.
I'm not sure I'm helping, but okay.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Today's show is sponsored in part by HelloFresh.
Mm-hmm.
HelloFresh, as you know, Taylor, is a meal kit delivery service that shops, plans and delivers step-by-step recipes and pre-measured ingredients so you can just cook, eat and enjoy. And according to your earlier ad read, not argue about who cleans up afterwards.
Yes, that's a part. It makes it easier, yes, because you're using like fewer pots. You tend to have less cooking sprawl, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's more manageable because, like, really, it is sort of I know this is, like, very much first world problems here, but, like, it is sort of an annoying thing to figure out, like, do I put the red onion in Tupperware? Does it need to be wrapped in plastic? What do I do with this leftover red bell pepper? How long does it last? I don't know these things, Daryl. Then you don't want to eat the red bell pepper because it's been sitting, like, cut up for, like, a week, and now maybe it's a little bit slimy, maybe it's got mold on it. Again, these are things you don't have to worry about because you get pre-portioned ingredients.
Yep.
You use the ingredient, and it's all gone.
HelloFresh is killing the Tupperware industry.
They are. They are.
But the Tupperware industry did fine for a long time.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is very true. And I also appreciate, maybe I've said this before, but I would like to say it again, that I think when I tend to cook, I make the stuff that I either want to make in that moment or know how to make. I'll make a sandwich.
You're stuck in a recipe rut.
Or it's just stuck in I have this stuff in my fridge, I can make this into this, and that's what I'm going to make now. So I appreciate that HelloFresh gives you a wider variety of things, and certainly a wider variety of recipes and overall foods that I would not normally eat.
Fair enough. I like that it's quick. Because when I try and cook myself sometimes, if I'm sort of, what's the word, jazzing it, just trying to figure it out on the fly, it ends up taking...
You went with jazzing it?
Yes.
That's what you thought it was. That was the word you were looking for.
I don't really think that's
What's the word? Jazzing it? Never been said before.
I thought that might be fun to say. Turns out it wasn't. If I'm just making it up as I go along... it tends to take me a long time because then I do something wrong, I have to come back and I have to correct that, and I'm in the kitchen for over an hour making something that isn't very good.
Jazzing it. Yeah.
Not jazzing it. With HelloFresh, the meals come together in about 30 minutes. They will tell you exactly how long it takes, and it really will take that long. You follow the step-by-step instructions. You've got the prepackaged ingredients. About 30 minutes or whatever they say is exactly what it takes.
And then that would be jazzing it, I assume. Yeah, about 30 minutes. You're jazzing it with your meal, and it looks like it's a professionally made meal, which we very much appreciate. We also appreciate that you can get $80 off your first month of HelloFresh by going to HelloFresh.com/TSS80 and enter the promo code TSS80 at checkout.
I'm going to repeat it just so people can hear it in a British accent. It's HelloFresh.com/TSS80 and enter promo code TSS80 at checkout. I'm hoping that might have just been enough to convince some people.
I hope it is, yeah, because it's worth remembering that it's like receiving 8 meals free or getting $20 off your first 4 boxes, which is definitively jazzy. So thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's episode. Daryl Grove, let's go.
I was just thinking Jazzy Jeff and the HelloFresh Prince.
Oh yeah, I was trying to work into DJ Jazzy Jeff. Get the DJ in there at least. What's wrong with you, sir?
DJ Jazzy Jeff and the HelloFresh Prince.
Yes.
There we go.
Exactly.
If they'd be interested in renaming the company, I think that could be a winner.
As long as I'm not actually Spider-Man, so as long as you don't throw me out the window.
That's exactly what Spider-Man would say.
Uncle Phil threw it. See, there you go. I'm getting better. The way Uncle Phil throws out DJ Jazzy Jeff, I think we'll be just fine. And you shouldn't throw me out either because we're lucky enough to have 2 sponsors on today's episode.
We certainly are. We mentioned webbing earlier.
Oh boy.
Today's show is also sponsored by Grip 6, the only belt with no holes and no belt flap hanging out.
I don't know what to make of that transition you just did there. It's professional, and it connects to the product.
So impressed?
I guess so. I think I'm just still reeling from Jazzy.
So, Grip 6 belts. Hopefully you've heard about them on the Total Soccer Show before. It is a new kind of belt designed in the United States, manufactured in the United States. It is the low-profile, slimline belt that you can rely on.
Do you want to hear something surprising?
Yes, please.
I'm wearing it right now. You're wearing it right now as well.
Same here.
And to back up what we talked about the other day, I wore it to a wedding this past weekend.
Oh, yeah?
It fit the ensemble quite well,
yes.
is what my wife informed me.
Very nice. Because it's not bulky either, right? So it's not poking out, like making your shirt flip up or making your pants look weird. I like the low profile of it.
So here's the thing. I brought a regular belt. I brought a normal, buckle, there's holes in it, all that stuff. And Margaret said, oh, no, that's much more low profile. It's understated, but it looks really nice and looks really sleek. And I said, I'm going to use all of that in the next ad read.
Thank you for helping me, Margaret. Yeah. Yes. Also, I know we've talked about my health recently a lot on the Total Soccer Show. I have, against my will, lost weight in the last month or so with my Grip 6 belt.
I was really nervous about what this was going to be.
The benefit has been it's so precise that I haven't had to do that stupid thing that you have to do with old belts where maybe you have to poke a hole in it to adjust to your new waist size. Grip 6 really is, once you put it on with the way the mechanism works and the badger teeth, you just slide it until it clicks, until you've got it exactly where you want it to be, and you get a precision fit every single time.
I'm very glad that it fits you so that you can kind of not have to go out and buy a bunch of belts. But I'm wondering, though, what is more annoying? To have the belt that's too long and then you have to wrap it around and the belt tail? Or is it more annoying to have the little nubbin belt tail that you can't then plug into the thing so then it sticks out on its own and then it doesn't look sleek at all?
I wouldn't know because I've got a Grip 6 belt.
There we go. I did. We've talked about this, that again, I'm the Marie Kondo influence, trying to get rid of some stuff. And I looked at my Grip 6 belt and I said, goodbye, all you other belts that I've had for years that are scuffed. And now I'm realizing how run down you look. they're all gone.
Grip 6 sparks joy.
Uh-huh.
It sparks even more joy if you can get some money off.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to grip6.com/TSS, it's spelled GRIP, the number 6.com/TSS. Grip 6 have very nicely set up a special Total Soccer Show discount page. So you'll get, I believe, 20% off just a single belt and about a third off of a 3-pack. Mm-hmm. So go to grip6.com/TSS and get the Total Soccer Show discount. Spark some joy in your life.
Spark some joy in your life, indeed. Thank you very much to Grip 6 for sponsoring today's episode. Now, Daryl Grove, with all that said, I'm going out the window. Goodbye!
Okay, so the forward line feels good, right? We feel good. We feel good about it.
Yeah.
The back line, maybe not so much. And I was concerned by Tiana Davidson in SheBelieves Cup. Obviously, the moment against, was it Japan or England, where she sort of fluffed the clearance and hit Crystal Dunn with it, and the US conceded, seemed to be like emblematic of a not great tournament for Tiana Davidson.
Yeah, it was definitely not a great tournament for her. I think, one of the things I would say is at the last SheBelieves Cup in 2018, Becky Sauerbrunn was injured, and it was Tiana Davidson and Abby Dahlkemper, and they won that tournament. They looked pretty good. I think Tiana Davidson is coming back from an injury. She was out for quite a while. She's also 20 years old, and I think that is maybe the concern going into a World Cup, is that she hasn't really played in some of these high pressure situations and had to kind of play through them and shake it off. She did have a difficult tournament. I still think she's a very good player, and I think she probably is sort of the future of the center back position when Sauerbrunn eventually retires. The whole back line didn't really look good in this tournament, so it's hard for me to just point out Tiana Davidson when I thought everyone looked kind of bad. And that goes back to the chemistry thing and the communication. There was just a lot of miscommunication that should not be happening at this point. So, that's something they need to work on. And I think once that sorts itself out, Tiana Davidson is a very good player. I don't know if she's going to be starting in the World Cup or not. I think it's Becky Sauerbrunn and either Davidson or Dahlkemper. But yeah, the back line, it wasn't great.
It did seem to me that when Sauerbrunn came back in, it did seem to get a little better.
Yeah, the team needs that leadership, and that's what Becky Sauerbrunn provides. She is a leader. She's a veteran. She's been on the team a long time. And, this is a different back line than competed in the 2015 World Cup. Becky Sauerbrunn is the only player that's still on there. And I think, these young players are good, but I think you lose something when you don't have that sort of veteran leadership and someone who is willing to kind of take charge and communicate and organize. So, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that Becky Sauerbrunn is healthy for the World Cup.
I feel like we've hit every position except goalkeeper. The big thing at the SheBelieves Cup is that Jill Ellis finally gave another goalkeeper a chance. Adriana Franch finally got her first cap, I believe.
Yeah, but it was because Alyssa Nair was injured. So the plan was
I didn't know that. I thought it was a rotation. Oh,
no, Alyssa Nair had a minor shoulder injury. She was going to play all 3 games every minute, but she got injured. So Adriana Franch did get her first cap, and Ashlyn Harris got another cap. And unless either of them had the greatest game in goal ever, the goalkeeper depth chart isn't going to change. So it's still Alyssa Nair. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, Adriana Franch is starting. Does this mean, she could contend for the starting spot? No. Sorry to burst any bubbles, but it's still Alyssa Nair. It was just, it sounded pretty minor, maybe a precautionary thing.
And I know you talked to Taylor last time you were on here about the goalkeeper plan is essentially, because Alyssa Nair didn't get that many caps because Hope Solo just dominated the position, it seems Jill Ellis has decided the best course of action is just play Alyssa Nair as many times as possible and we just basically risk that she doesn't get injured, so then we don't have an inexperienced keeper coming in as backup. I'm assuming that's still the case.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if Alyssa Nair were to get injured, hopefully not, but if that were to happen, the team would be right back where they were when Hope Solo got kicked off the team. So, hopefully after the cycle, they're able to reassess the goalkeeper depth chart and kind of how that works. But at this point, Jill Ellis has decided we got to put all our eggs in this basket. Alyssa Nair is our starting goalkeeper. We need to give her as many reps as possible. And I think, Adriana Franch, she is a very good goalkeeper. I think she's been the best goalkeeper in the NWSL over the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. I think she's been better than Nair and Harris in the NWSL. But she had a big gaffe that was a miscommunication issue. And I think that kind of all ties together with the back line and, getting reps with the back four together, but also with the goalkeeper. So
you're talking about the Mallory Pugh back pass that I think then Dahlkamper kind of didn't know whether to go to or not, and then Franch came out and claimed it, caught it, and we conceded an indirect free kick from which England scored, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it was the sort of thing that obviously Adriana Franch knows she's not supposed to pick up a back pass. It just seemed like confusion. The players weren't really sure who was supposed to be getting that ball. Mallory Pugh, again, is not a central midfield. She's not normally in that position playing those sorts of balls. So it was a lot of miscommunication from players being in there who haven't had any time together. So, that's sort of a side effect of some of the tinkering that we've seen.
So is there any other questions that you would like answered before the World Cup starts? Like what would you be looking for post SheBelieves Cup and over the next few games?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I am still trying to figure out who the backup left back for this team is, because Crystal Dunn is the starter. I don't think she had a great SheBelieves Cup. No one on the back line did. That has not changed the fact that Crystal Dunn is the starting left back for this team, and that's where she should be. But who is the number two? I think Casey Short should be the number two. She got 0 minutes in the SheBelieves Cup. She's barely played in the past, I guess, a year. I don't know who the backup is to Crystal Dunn. Emily Fox started as a left back against France.
Again, that didn't go well, did it?
No, it didn't go well at all. And again, I don't think she's going to be in the World Cup. So, that's kind of a lingering question for me. I think at right back, it's probably Emily Sonnet is going to be the backup to Kelly O'Hara. It's kind of an imperfect situation because Emily Sonnet is really a center back that Jill Ellis has decided to kind of be the backup right back. I think Jill Ellis really favors and prioritizes versatility just because going into a tournament, you have only so many spots. So for her to be able to have Emily Sonnet slot in as a center back if she needs to, or right back. But I don't know. I do have questions about kind of the depth chart on the back line and who's going to be filling in where.
Are there any sort of wild cards beyond Casey Short that you think could get a go at left back in the next couple of months? Because NWSL is going to start, right? So someone could maybe shine and get a chance, and maybe someone we haven't even thought about becomes their backup left back at the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the left back position has so shallow depth. Like, there's not that many great options that I feel like Jill Ellis has already tried and then sort of discarded the ones that she didn't think worked. I don't know how many more players there is for her to look at. I mean, I think, she even had Tiana Davidson kind of fill in there. So, yeah, that's going to be something to watch. I mean, if a player emerges in the NWSL, it might be hard for Jill Ellis to ignore that, but we're also about 3 months out from the World Cup, and I don't know how much she's going to be bringing new players into the system at this point.
Here's an odd question that just occurred to me. I know NWSL starts basically early to mid-April, right? Is that good or bad in terms of World Cup prep for the players that are playing in the league? Like, is it good that they get like a month of games and then they're maybe ready to go, or is that not enough time before the World Cup? Not enough time in season?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think that we're going to see national team players spend a lot of time away from the NWSL, because I think that the U.S. is probably going to have like a pretty long camp in the run up to the World Cup. So I actually don't even know how many games they're going to get in the NWSL. I think it is good that, the teams are in preseason now. Preseason has started. It's good that now the players are going to be in that environment, because, they can't be full-time national team players. But I think for this team, it is about them getting time together and chemistry and cohesion and all those things. So probably a camp serves them better in that sense anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think the NWSL is really competitive, and that's just going to be a good environment for the players to be in.
I'm almost embarrassed to ask this, but did you see the leaked kit this morning? The leaked possible jersey for the World Cup?
It's the white one that has just like a little red and a little bit of blue.
Yeah, like a red and blue band on the arm. I'm not sure how official it is, but yeah, otherwise very white.
Yeah, I mean, the website that leaked it has, I think, gotten every kit leak correct. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that was the kit. And all I have to say is that in 2015, the U.S. women had solid white kits with a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow, which Nike called Volt, which is not even a color, but they made it up.
I remember
so,
this. Yeah.
At least it's red, white, and blue. There's nothing called Volt. There's no made-up colors. So at least from that standpoint, it's an improvement over 2015.
The final thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you managed to see or not. You mentioned to me the other day that you were at Thorns practice, Portland Thorns practice.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking 13-year-old Olivia Moultrie has been practicing with the Thorns? So I'm wondering if you managed to see Olivia Moultrie in action in Thorns practice.
Yeah, I was at Thorns practice yesterday, and watching preseason practice is not the most compelling thing. Players are looking pretty rusty, and I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I was definitely focused on seeing this 13-year-old kid training with these professionals. And I actually tweeted out a couple of videos. If people want to look me up on Twitter and see them, she, I think, actually fit in pretty well. I was surprised. I didn't know what to expect. This is a 13-year-old kid who has passed on a scholarship from UNC. She signed with Nike and Wasserman, and now she's technically a professional, but she's not a professional soccer player. She's not playing for any teams. She has joined the Thorns Development Academy, and now she's training with the senior team. And I thought she looked pretty good. I mean, she didn't look out of place at all. It is preseason, so I think some of the players there were a little bit rusty, but I was really surprised to see a 13-year-old kind of holding her own in practice. I don't want to hype her up too much, turn it into a Freddie Adu situation. Yeah. But I thought she looked pretty good. And I think, UNC offered her a scholarship when she was 11. So I guess I have to trust that the scouts at UNC know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And, I didn't see anything at Thorns training that made me think I should doubt them.
Could she play for the Thorns in the NWSL if everybody wanted that to happen? Like, I'm not even sure what the legal age, the minimum age is to play professional soccer in the NWSL. Yeah,
at this point, it's no. The NWSL doesn't have a homegrown player rule like MLS does, first of all. So would the Thorns just be able to have dibs on her because she's in the development academy, or does she need to go through some sort of distribution order or something like that? That's a question that the league is going to have to address. I think I've seen a lot of assumptions that the age that you have to be to play in the NWSL is 18. From what I'm hearing, that may not actually be the case. So I think this is uncharted territory for the NWSL, and this is something that they're going to have to figure out, because if this 13-year-old kid is able to hold her own and could potentially play at that level, then this is something that the league is going to have to address. So I think we have more questions than answers right now on that.
Speaking of questions and answers, thank you, Caitlin, for taking the time to talk to me today. Before I let you go, we can't not have you plug the book one more time, because my understanding is that it's being released very, very soon.
Yeah, it comes out on April 2nd. It's called The National Team, The Inside Story of the Women Who Changed Soccer. And I would say if you're interested at all in any of this equal pay stuff that is broken today, if you've listened this far in the podcast, you're probably pretty interested in this stuff. You know, I did like 100 interviews with players, coaches, Sunil Gulati. Like, I interviewed a lot of people for this book, and there's a lot of anecdotes and information that is new and interesting. And I think, you know, I'm really excited for people to read it. So it's available for pre-order now. Thanks for letting me plug it.
Of course. I actually have one more question about it. Is it about sort of building the culture of the national team? Is that sort of the angle?
Well, it's the narrative history of the national team. So if you haven't really followed the team, you know, I know there are a lot of fans who maybe fell in love with the team in 2011 when they had that crazy game against Brazil, or, you know, 2015 when they won the World Cup. So this book will take you through the history of the team, starting with how the team formed in 1985. But a huge theme is sort of the culture around the team. You know, it focuses on the on-the-field stuff and the team's mentality as winners and fighting, and also off-the-field stuff. Because, you know, the fight and the mentality that we see on the field is the same thing that exists off the field. You know, this team, the lawsuit that was filed today is really just a continuation of what this team has been doing since the early 90s. I mean, they have been fighting and standing up for themselves for decades at this point. And, you know, I didn't want to ignore that. I think that's a huge part of the team's story. So that is a big focus of this book.
Okay, I look forward to reading it. You said early April?
April 2nd.
April 2nd. And if people can't wait that long, where else can they read your writing, Caitlin?
Yeah, I'm always popping up a few places. I'm at The Athletic, The Guardian, Yahoo. Follow me on Twitter. I mostly tweet about the U.S. women's national team. So I promise not to tweet about too much other stuff. But yeah.
All right, Caitlin, once again, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Awesome. Thank you.